Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. Bitcoin pretty much even for the day, but the big news is Bukele's at the White House, and we've got a little more information about that coming up. Interesting, they're not actually focused on Bitcoin. I find that hard to believe. On today's show, Metaplanet boosts Bitcoin holdings to 4,525 Bitcoin with a $26 million buy. Bhutan bets on Bitcoin, doubling salaries to combat brain drain. And of course, our feature story of today, Bitcoin takes a back seat as Trump Bukele focus on trade and immigration. Shocking. All this and so much more on today's show. Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka, and as mentioned, Bukele visits the White House, but the focus of the conversation was trade and immigration. I guess economics comes first. I'm sure they'll get to the Bitcoin tomorrow. I was really expecting a huge Bitcoin pump once the news of, something like Bukele, orange pills Trump, or recommended move to buy 1 million Bitcoin, something along this line. I think it'll come, and if it's made public news, I feel like Bitcoin is going to pump pretty hard tomorrow. Right now, let's get into some market watch and Bitcoin technical analysis. We have the BITI up 1%, 85,173. Ethereum up 1%, 1636. Solana down 0.5%, $130. XRP up 0.5%, $2.14. Doge down 3.25%, 16 cents. Taking a look at our crypto bubbles for the day, we have about a 50-50 split. If we go into the hourly, we see that everything's starting to make a move to the green. 95% in the green for the past hour. Let's zoom out to the weekly, and we see the big winners. XCN made a huge comeback. They were down and out for the count, I thought. Fartcoin up 52%. Jasmy up 55%. Ohm into the shitter, down 90%, and somehow it was down 90 something percent, and today it's down another 31%. So what is this thing actually worth? The market cap a few days ago was into the billions, and now the market cap's 590 million, down 20 in the volume market cap total. So it was 74th in market cap, and just in one day it went down 20 places. In a week, it's gone down 75 places. Ouch. Not a good look. Be careful with the shitcoinery, folks. I've said it many times. Look at this steep drop. It's like it jumped off a cliff straight down. And that was, of course, I guess that's for the week, but painful. She was at $6.77. She is at 50 cents as we speak. Painful. Again, I've said it many times. If you're going to muck around with shit coins, do not put your life savings in it. I think this goes without saying. Take 2%, 3%, 5% even of your holdings. Put it in some, speculative stuff, but do a little research. Don't just put it into crap. If you stay within the big three, the Bitcoin, the XRP, Solana, you should do okay, and it's a very good bet that you're not going to lose your shirt. Let's zoom out to the monthly. And now we're talking. Now we've got about a 60-40 mix, a little red over green, but things are a lot better than they were 2-3 weeks ago when everything was in the red for the month. Now we're seeing things pick up, and the tariff trade wars and all that had a lot to do with it, but we had a lot of time to buy the dip, and I think a lot of the real whales were doing exactly that. We covered multiple stories where it talked about the whales buying a crap load of Bitcoin. Checking out the total hash rate, and as we say many times, the price of Bitcoin follows the hash. First goes the hash rate, then goes the biddy. So if we check the all-time chart, we see it follows it relatively closely, except for one jump in here. This is the 2022 cycle peak. But once we get to our current point here, and what is this? 1 trillion terahash approaching. So this, the higher the hash rate, the more secure the network is. And generally, the price does follow the hash rate. So kicking butt in terms of global adoption and hash rate at this moment. Let's check out the M2 money supply, and we see a even closer correlation between the M2 money supply and the price of Bitcoin. And this is from inception here, right? 2013. And if we follow it along, we've got the pink line is the M2 money supply, global money supply, and the white is the biddy. And you see they're pretty damn close. Right now, the M2 money supply, basically it's a calculation of the total money supply globally, and it is very much expected that the money supply is going to start growing very shortly, and there's going to be a lot of printing of money. And once this shoots up to the right, Bitcoin's also going to shoot up to the right. And this is data from the top 21 central banks. So really, the central banks that we care about, we don't give a shit about any of the central banks. Let's face it, folks. But if we want to follow something, we want to follow trends, we want to follow pricing, this is something to look at closely to see historically the price has followed this, right? Let's be honest with ourselves. Look very, very closely. Check this out. Like these peaks, the valleys. So something to keep an eye on. We're going to keep checking it out on a daily basis so we can see exactly what's going on. And we should be able to zoom in on this thing. We can definitely do it for the hash rate, and which we see much more of a divergence than what you see in this chart. In this monthly chart, we see the Bitcoin price way down here, the hash rate way up here. So I do anticipate that the hash rate, the price will pop up soon to follow the hash rate. M2, there doesn't seem to be a way to manipulate this chart. Oh, there we go. But I kind of really zoomed in. I didn't want that much. Let's see if we can zoom out the same way. We cannot. It's a bit of a cheapo chart, right? We really like to see this long time view. Anyhow, I'll try and figure out a better way to track that. Currently, the Bitcoin market cap's at $1.69 trillion. Ethereum, $1.97 billion. XRP, $125 billion. Solana, $67 billion. Tron, $24 billion. Doge, $24 billion, just below Tron. Cardano, $22.5 billion market cap. The total crypto market cap right now is $2.65 trillion, with Bitcoin holding 63.75% of that. Ethereum 7.4%, XRP 4.7%. We are currently in a 38 in fear in our crypto fear and greed index. Yesterday was 31 in fear. Last week was a 24 in fear. There's approximately 1,093 days and left until the next Bitcoin halving in 2028, with 157,533 blocks left to mine until that halving. Total assets by market cap, we've got gold still sitting up top, and I don't see it giving up its supremacy anytime soon unless people start selling their gold for the more scarce Bitcoin, which might just happen one day. Gold, $21.7 trillion market cap. Apple, $3 trillion. Microsoft, $2.9 trillion. Nvidia, $2.7 trillion. Amazon, $1.9 trillion. Google, $1.9 trillion. Silver, $1.8 trillion. There's the biddy, $1.687 trillion, sitting in the number 8 position. Saudi Aramco, $1.67 trillion, just behind the biddy. And Facebook, $1.377 trillion. You can currently get 1,175 Satoshis for one fiat US dollar. Getting into the U.S. National Debt Watch, we've got the current U.S. National Debt, $36,726 billion. It will hit in the next few minutes. That equals to $107,354 per U.S. citizen, or $323,049 per U.S. taxpayer. The Doge savings clock is up to total savings for U.S. $318 billion, which equals to $2,835 per taxpayer. That's approximately $75 per taxpayer since yesterday. Not too shabby, Elon. I don't know why they keep burning your cars down, but it seems that you're doing a good thing for the entire country, really. Saving them money. So another interesting thing to look at, U.S. federal interest rate. Get off the screen there. Interest savings per year. Federal debt interest. Right. U.S. total debt. U.S. interest paid $5 trillion in interest, folks. You think your mortgage is hurting you? Check this shit out. $5.4 trillion in interest. Wowzers. Let's see what else is going on here, folks, because, we've got the Doge saving us money, the government spending our money, and it's not even the current government. Current government's trying to save us money. It's the stacking on top of one government to the next government to the next government, and nobody doing anything about it. So let's see how it ends up over this 4-year term. I'm very interested if this debt clock actually slows down. I've been looking at it for a couple of years, and not once has this debt clock ever slowed down. Like, this number just, it's like an infinite up. Quite the opposite of the Doge clock, which is also an infinite. Look how fast these numbers are moving, right? It's just insane. Wouldn't it be so freaking cool if we saw these numbers slow down and then actually stop and reverse? I don't know if it's even possible. It's at the point where there's so much interest, $5.4 trillion in interest. Are you kidding me? Right? So, big money owing. Too much government overreach, too much government spending. Never a thought of saving. Don't be like the U.S. government, folks. Live within your means. Do the smart thing. invest conservatively, invest for the long run, and things will definitely work out for you. One company that's saving is good old Metaplanet. They boost their Bitcoin holdings to 4,525 Bitcoin with another $26 million buy. Metaplanet has once again reinforced its commitment to Bitcoin, acquiring an additional 319 Bitcoin worth approximately $26 million at an average price of $82,500 each. This latest buy brings the company's total Bitcoin to 4,525 Bitcoin, valued at $386 million. Relentless Bitcoin Accumulation, the publicly traded listed company on the Tokyo Exchange, has been steadily buying its Bitcoin treasury since 2023 through a combination of strategic financial maneuvers. It employs a multi-pronged approach, using a direct market purchases, cash-secured puts option, and capital market financing to maximize its BTC acquisition while minimizing costs. Metaplanet also uses a key metric to track its performance, BTC yield. It measures the growth of the company's Bitcoin holding relative to the outstanding shares. In the final quarter of 2024, the firm reported an astounding 310% yield. However, in quarter 1, 2025, the metric dropped to a mere 95.6%. And since beginning of April, it has stood at 6.5%. And this is 1 month, guys. And when you go over to your typical mutual fund manager at the bank, they're proud to get you, 5% or 6%. And instead, these guys are talking in the biddy here, 310%. Quarter 1 dropped to 95.6%. And at the beginning of April stood at 6.5%. That's, again, for a month. And then your financial advisor is trying to get you that for a year. So you're not going to find these kind of returns at your local financial institution, folks. Let's face it. The latest purchase pushes Metaplanet into the top 10 global corporate holders of Bitcoin, surpassing firms like Semler Scientific and Bitcoin Group. It also brings its overall ownership of Bitcoin supply to 0.02%. So, when they say 4,525 Bitcoin, that doesn't sound like a lot, but $386 million sounds like a lot. It's easy to forget that Bitcoin's at $85,000. So 4,500 Bitcoin is a shitload. So they're doing quite well with that. It's a great approach. It's the Michael Saylor put. They're selling their stock, their own stock, and they're buying the biddy, right? So not bad. On the other hand, we see a very small island nation using Bitcoin to its advantage. Bhutan bets on Bitcoin, doubling salaries to combat brain drain. So everybody's leaving this tiny little island so they can go, to the big cities and do well, right? Let's face it. But Bhutan is basically using their Bitcoin to keep people in the country. According to an Al Jazeera report, the Bhutan kingdom's bet on Bitcoin has been crucial in solving the island's economic problems. In particular, the world's largest cryptocurrency has helped to double civil servant salaries and reduce brain drain, mass exodus of skilled Bhutan workers, which is what brain drain is. Basically, everybody leaves to go. It's like people leaving, Mexico or Canada to go work in the States because there's better opportunities and more money. So there's, of course, this brain drain happens all around the world. It happens certainly from the small towns into the big cities, and it happens from the smaller countries into the bigger countries. The report stated that 10% of Bhutan's 800,000 population left the island in 2022 for better wages in developed countries, and the trend extended into 2024. 10% of their population, so 80,000 people left in 2022 to get better wages in developed countries. But Bitcoin solved this crisis. Bitcoin to the rescue again, eh? In a separate interview in March, Bhutan's Prime Minister Tshering Tobgay stated, "We've used Bitcoin to provide a free healthcare and for the environment. But these are minor. The main use of Bitcoin has been to finance the salaries of public workers." Very interesting. The report added that the island sold 100 million worth of Bitcoin in 2023 to increase salaries. Bhutan has a massive hydroelectric power, and the excess electricity is either sold to India or dedicated to BTC mining. Cool. Well, the second is cool. Mining involves running supercomputers to find BTC blocks and gain rewards. According to the blockchain intelligence provider Etherium, Bhutan currently has 8.19 thousand bitcoins, so 8,190 Bitcoin, worth about $700 million per current value. In 2024, the island's BTC holding peaked at 13,000, suggesting 5,000 has been offloaded in the past few months. That said, Bhutan isn't alone in the BTC endeavor. El Salvador uses a similar strategy and mines BTC using its vast volcanic power resources, geothermal volcanic power. However, most of its current stash has been directly acquired from the markets. It remains to be seen how it will leverage its holdings to solve the country's problems. Countries including U.S., El Salvador, Bhutan, and others collectively control 529,000 Bitcoin per Bitcoin Treasury data. Continued nation-state adoption could fuel Bitcoin demand and prop up value in the long run. Indeed, I've been calling for this for a long time, right? And it's been happening for quite some time. El Salvador was the first to come out and actually adopt Bitcoin as a national currency. So, and they still have it, despite what you might be hearing. The deal was that the IMF was going to give them $2 billion, and they basically said, "We're giving you $2 million, but you have to stop with your Bitcoin as a national currency." Now, from people in the know, they're still accepting Bitcoin, folks down there. There's not going to be stopping. There's no going back when you start adopting the Bitty. Restaurants, it seems, have a sign. Not every restaurant was forced to allow people to pay in Bitcoin previously, and it still isn't. It seems like there's a sign on the door, just the same way you go into anywhere, and there's an Interac sign saying they'll take your debit card, right? They've got a Bitcoin sign. They will accept Bitcoin. Easy like that. Now, speaking of El Salvador, the big news was Bukele, Prime Minister of El Salvador, visited the White House today to meet Trump. And I was hoping they were just going to talk about Bitcoin, and they're talking about Bitcoin, right? There's no mistake that Bitcoin for sure came up in the discussions. However, Bitcoin takes a back seat to Trump as Bukele focuses on trade and immigration. Despite leading the pro-Bitcoin administrations, Trump and Bukele left crypto off the table during a April 14th White House meeting. U.S. President Donald Trump hosted El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele at the White House on April 14th with talks centered on trade and immigration, excluding Bitcoin from the public agenda. You see, the public agenda. I'm sure they talked about it behind closed doors. Pressing issues of immigration and bilateral security cooperation set the tone of Bukele's first official meeting to the White House during Trump's second term. According to a live stream shared by Bukele's office on X, Trump raised the possibility of transferring U.S. citizens convicted of crimes to prisons in El Salvador, urging Bukele to extend the country's prison system to house more prisoners. I said homegrowns are next. The homegrowns. You got to build about 5 more places. Since taking office, Trump administration has deported hundreds of alleged foreign criminal individuals to El Salvador under a $6 million deal between the two countries. Trump also addressed the ongoing trade war unleashed by his administration on April 2nd, suggesting a potential temporary exemption for automakers aimed at easing the transition of their supply chains. I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies with it, Trump told reporters present at the meeting, adding that the U.S. auto industry needs a little bit of time to relocate production to the country. The meeting did not touch on digital assets and Bitcoin policy, a flagship initiative of both presidents' administrations. El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender in 2021, pioneering the Bitcoin strategic reserve approach, later followed by Trump. The U.S. president positioned himself as a pro-crypto candidate during the 2024 election. On March 6, Trump signed an executive order to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve and digital asset stockpile in the United States. The U.S. holds nearly 200,000 Bitcoin, valued at over $17 billion as of March. The reserve is primarily formed of Bitcoin seized in criminal and civil cases, including significant amounts from the Silk Road and Bitfinex hack cases. So I'm hoping that over the next couple of days, a little more information comes out about their conversations with Bukele and Trump. And I wouldn't be surprised. One of the reporters for sure, is going to come up and ask with some Bitcoin-related questions. And I won't be surprised at all if Trump tells the truth and says, yeah, we talked about it, and this is what we talked about. And, he gave some recommendations from, Bukele's got 4 years of experience of holding the Bitcoin as a treasury reserve. And we also accept the Bitcoin in these locations and, for coffee and for banking and for whatever it is, consumer goods, and maybe he's put the bug in the ear of Trump to do the same. I'd like to see one day some real Bitcoin adoption, i.e., Amazon comes out and says, we are now accepting Bitcoin, or big companies, you can now buy your iPhone with a Bitcoin or something like this. We know Ferrari came out and you can still buy a Ferrari with Bitcoin, but who's got $500,000 in Bitcoin to buy a Ferrari? And if you did, would you really be buying a Ferrari? Now, Michael Saylor probably bought one, right? But unless you have, 10 Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin goes to $500,000 a coin, okay, then maybe you're talking, right? You drop half a Bitcoin and buy a Ferrari, but, normal folks ain't buying a Ferrari if Bitcoin goes to 500 grand. They're either hodling, or they're taking it and paying their mortgage, or they're selling and then gonna double down and buy 2 Bitcoin when the price drops, as it has in previous cycles. And this is the hope, right, that you can kind of play these up and down markets, these 4-year cycles. Buying a Ferrari is not really something people are going to look at unless they have a hell of a lot of Bitcoin. But they do accept it, right? So maybe this conversation between Bukele and Trump kind of went that route. Hey, you can go and buy your coffee with Bitcoin. Did you know that? And maybe it'll come to some type of exemption, which is similar to what was announced by it was one of the countries that basically said we're allowing, I think it was $10,000 in Bitcoin to be spent in the country without having to pay capital gains on it, which I think was a great idea, right? You can pay for your expenses if you have a lot of Bitcoin. Now, right now, unless you have a lot of Bitcoin, it's still HODL time. For me, it's HODL time. We're not anywhere near the cycle peak, which generally happens toward the end of October and into November, the year after the halving. And we're still 6 months away. And, instead of the price being, way into a all-time high, we've kind of pulled back, right? The all-time high is 109 something, and we've been sitting around this $85,000, despite all the market turmoil with the tariffs, right? So again, once the M2 money supply globally starts to kick in and they start printing money, this is not going to be highly advertised, folks. They don't really talk about money printing very much at all. They need to keep it on the hush, because the more money that's printed, the less your money in your pocket is worth. Let me give you a good example. I've done this before, and it's very easy to see that you're losing your frickin' shirt, as per money debasement, right? So let's just go into a simple graphics program here, and let's call this the current total money supply. Fair enough? That's it there. Your little piece of the pie. This is you, the vertical line, and that's how much money you currently have, right? So you see, compared to the total money supply, this little skinny little line is you, right? Everybody's got their skinny little line. Now, here's the total money supply, right? So what happens if they double the money supply just by printing money out of thin air? Now, look what's happened to your cut. It's worth half as much. What happens if they print the shit out of money, right? Which is what they've been doing over and over again. Now, your sliver hasn't changed, but your money is worth significantly less in terms of the comparison between the total money supply and your actual supply personal money. So this is a very easy way to show what money debasement does. And by all means, if you've got some friends who don't know anything about this and they're money printing because we need more money, right? Just do me a favor and do a little diagram like this. You don't even need a diagram. You can just do it on your arm, on your hand. This is your piece of the pie. This is your total money supply, your arm, let's say, right? And this is your little piece of the pie. And then your whole arm is the money supply. And then all of a sudden they print so much money that now your arm extends out all the way to frickin' the other end of the building, right? It's a very easy way to get the message out that this money printing does not help the common folk. It does not help the currency. It devalues the currency. It debases the currency. It is worth less. It increases inflation on top of that. It's the number one thing for increasing inflation, not tariffs, not the price of eggs. It is money debasement, folks. The good thing is there is tons of money around the world. Money is abundant. There's $900 trillion of assets around the world. So money is abundant. Money's everywhere. So go get your share of it. It is time that's scarce, guys. So spend your time wisely. Always spend less money than what you earn. And that way you'll always stay in the green. If you suddenly start making more money, start saving more money. Don't start spending more money. And start saving today. If you can start saving and investing in your late teens or early 20s, you can hopefully retire when you're 40 or 45. If you have a great idea, start with your idea today. Even if you're not ready, start today and things will come together. And before you know it, your ideas come to fruition and hopefully it succeeds. And even if it doesn't, you'll have the fulfillment to know that in your head, you didn't just sit on this idea, you tried. You'll be fulfilled, right? Folks, I'm hoping that for free, everybody who sees this stream hits the subscribe button. It is 100% free, and it'll help me in achieving the goal to get to over 500,000 subscribers. 500 subscribers this year. Maybe 500,000 in the future, but I'm starting at 500. So if you enjoyed what you heard, please do watch again, and also share, like, comment, and of course subscribe, and we will see you on the next stream. Folks, thanks so much for joining.